of the country. That's incredibly rare, and it's something that Scotland could use. But it just depends on, again, that imagination. A lot of people who have grown up within the British political system and culture can't really imagine a world in which we don't base our interaction with the outside world on military alliance and force. And that's the issue. You think about Norway, their empire, puny to start off with, but really was quite localized. And so they had to reimagine their role in the world, not based on military might or on being sort of the tail of America, but on being something new and different. And they were able to do that. I think in Scotland we could do that as well. But I think even within the SNP, there are those who are quite addicted dangerously to the idea of being under NATO's wing because we simply have to be part of something. Because if you're not part of something, you don't exist, and that's incredibly dangerous.
Yeah, forced to agree. But speaking of incredibly dangerous, a couple of your more recent blogs have been about the what I think John Pilger memorably described as the American election cycle. It's just a big show of flags, balloons, and bullshit. But we're in the middle of it now, and you've written a couple of things about Trump recently. But what are you making of the whole thing in general?
Well, what we're seeing is the revolt of the oi polloi, the revolt of people who don't matter on both sides. That's the real story. It's been ignored in part because Trump is such a big personality. He's getting the majority of the news coverage. One part of the revolt against the Republican establishment, which is this right-wing populism, this nativism with sort of seeds of white supremacy dotted in there, is obviously embodied in Donald Trump. And he's getting a lot of coverage because he's able to say these bombastic things, these negative things, and he successfully overturned the Republican establishment. But there's another story on the other side, which is that of elite liberalism, as represented by Hillary Clinton, versus this insurgent democratic socialist movement, a much more progressive form of liberalism and grassroots form of liberalism in the form of Bernie Sanders. That's been bubbling away. And what both of these movements are linked by, I know that, Sanders supporters don't like to be linked to Trump in any way, but what they fundamentally are linked by is a rejection of the end of history thesis, which is governments are going to take a backseat to corporations, globalized trade is the be on and end all, free market liberalism is the end point of civilized development and society. And what that is what we're seeing is a rejection of that. We're seeing a right-wing populist rejection, which resents sort of social progress and diversity, but also has a lot of protectionism. It's also a lot of blue-collar, white working-class people who resent the fact that their jobs have been shipped overseas, quite rightly. And on the left, we're also seeing a similar economic imperative. In a sense, the tragedy that I'm quite worried about is that the left or the elite liberal class will successfully put down the Bernie Sanders rebellion, but the Republican establishment will fail to put down this popular right-wing sentiment, and it will have a massive impact on future elections. Because even if Trump doesn't win, I don't think it's a done deal that he would lose actually against Hillary Clinton. I think in many ways Hillary Clinton would be an excellent candidate for Donald Trump because he can appeal to independents, of which he is highly distrusted. He can appeal to blue-collar Democrats as well. And he's a wild card. He can rehabilitate himself by November without a shadow of a doubt.
But then, do you think that the problem for Trump actually winning the whole thing could be that, he does, although you're saying he can appeal to blue-collar Democrats, there's been plenty of stuff he said that comes out, sexist, racist, elitist, and basically most of America is not white, old, middle class, and rich anymore. Most of America is Hispanic, is female, and and black. And if you add up all these groups, then that outnumbers the sort of old, angry white man vote in any way you'd care to sort of spin out the numbers. I've seen this sort of theory put out as the big way that Trump's never going to get in.
Well, yes, but that assumes that all these disparate groups are going to come out and vote. If you look at the primary election data, The Democrats are woeful, actually. The party nationally is in a really bad state. The Republicans run, I think, about 60% of state legislatures, governor seats. The party's pretty much been decimated at a state and local level. But also, there's a good there's a good point to be made that African American and Latino turnout was very, very high for the Obama campaign, but there's no guarantee that it would be particularly high for Mrs. Clinton. Also, even if Trump doesn't necessarily win outside his natural constituency, white men, it's still going to change the nature of American politics in the future. It's going to be a lot more overtly violent. It's going to be a lot more overtly racist, and he'll still command roughly about 30 to 40% of the country. If Clinton was to beat him, which she looks like she would at the moment, she'll get 60, roughly about 60, 65 maybe. That still leaves you with just under half of the country who, liberal commentators call batshit crazy. But really, it's an issue. You need to live in the same country as these people. How do you reconcile that degree of hate? Well, you start doing it by creating a system in which people have fair employment, where people feel that they have a future. And one of the things about Trump that I fear the most is he has quite a lot or he has the potential to gather a lot of shadow support. As in, when you look at the polls, I assume that Trump is the kind of person that a lot of people would never admit to another human that they would vote for. But in the privacy of the voting booth, that changes. There's quite a few demagogues, quite a few right-wing populists that, when the polling is asked, they'll say, "No, I won't vote Trump. I'll vote for something respectable." But when they get in that polling booth, you better believe they'll vote for Trump. And I fear that there are actually quite a few more people out there who would vote for him, but would never admit it out in the open. I think that liberals and progressives in America need to be very careful about this degree of complacency.
I'd agree. You could also take the Alex Salmond position, because they asked him what he thought if Trump wins, and he said, well, I've already bought a bit of land in Antarctica because I've heard that that's the last place that the radiation arrives.
Yeah, well, they discovered that planet, didn't they? Kelp or something. I've forgotten the number. I'm not great with numbers or science. Might need to get a ticket out there on one of Richard Branson's shuttles.
It looks like it might be necessary, unfortunately. But okay, so it's your first time on the podcast. So the question that I give to everyone is, we've talked about some of the issues already, but was there one overarching reason or one moment where you decided that Scottish independence was the right thing, in your opinion?
Yeah, it was a very selfish reason, actually. It was thinking about English history, actually, and that's just an odd answer, but I'm very passionate about the period of the War of the Three Kingdoms. It's called the English Civil War, but it just goes to show how Anglo-centric we can be. It's the War of the Three Kingdoms, the Civil War, where basically Scotland started it off by rejecting the English prayer book of Charles I, and all the radical movements that came out of that conflict in that century with the Levellers, the Diggers, and for me, Scotland going its own way was so crucial for the country of my birth that I have deep affection for. That frustrates me so much. But I admired the fact that Scotland had taken the first step to dismantling the British state, because it wouldn't just mean freedom for Scotland and the ability to create a Scottish nation built on different progressive principles, modern principles, but it would mean a chance for everyone else. Scottish liberation means liberation for everyone else. It literally does. And that's a common reason I found among a lot of English people that already live in England who are passionate about Scotland, feel deeply committed to Scotland. It's their home, it always will be. But there's an underlying thing of, do you know what? This isn't just for Scotland and the future of Scotland. This will be great for everyone. This is really going to kickstart the progressive movement across the UK, a modernising movement across the UK. And thinking back to my passion about that period of history was a massive motivator and something that just sort of made the light bulb in my mind go off, and certainly lit the fire in my belly about being passionate about Scotland.
All right, thanks very much. Then the absolute last thing on the show is that it's your first time on again. You get to choose the tune. So can you tell us what song you've chosen to play us out and why?
I think it will have to be Freedom Kamoi, but the version by Wounded Knee.
No problem. Thanks very much for coming on, Robert. That's been wonderful.
Thank you very much for having me. Bye.
Things that fell